considering the comments of the referral groups. At that meeting, the meeting will be exclusively a Cape Project Curtis meeting, minus plus some sort of minor content. But the goal was to sort of really create an opportunity for a full discussion and presentation by staff. I think staff have 4 different reports to present regarding that. 3 or 4? Yeah. 2? Yeah. So anyways, that is a plan that is in place. And so that's where we will be considering it. I wanted to speak to sort of 2 issues that I sort of hear in the community right now that I think are important. The first is, I have heard criticism, why is it taking so long? I'd like to sort of speak simply to that. The proposal was brought forward, or given first reading in September. And at that time, then council, the last council said, okay, let's go forward with the referral and a public process. And we went forward with the referral, and the public process concept was basically articulated, but then we got into several complications. One, council was consumed with the turf field. That was a big issue. Second, we got into the election campaign, and the sitting council wanted to complete things. And so in terms of sort of completing land use things, we focused on Abbey Field as the thing we wanted to drive through to completion. So during the election campaign, there were many opinions sort of spoken to in terms or basically opinions on the Cape Project Curtis proposal. I think that created some uncertainty in the eyes of staff as to what the intentions were. Once we got the new council, we had to clarify those intentions. We have a busy work plan. We have things that we need to get going on. The referrals themselves took a while to complete. I think, Michael, they were available. You could have had them on the March, or the February 6th meeting or 9th meeting. They were available then. We didn't want to squeeze them into a part of the meeting. We wanted a full meeting, and so March 2nd was identified as the meeting. But essentially, the referral process has taken us to this point. So people may feel like nothing's going on or that we're not moving forward on this. In fact, that is the timetable that was sort of required for the referral process. The second thing I want to speak to is, this will all be dealt with in the March 2nd meeting, and that is public process. And what I'm hearing in the community, and I think we've got to be really cautious of, is sort of a sense that there are only 2 options. We have yet to start a public process, and yet people are saying, well, there are only 2 choices. And public processes are creative efforts where you basically create options through a community conversation. And so I think, I worry about sort of and I respect the anxieties that are in the community. I mean, there are strong opinions on both sides, but I think we have to sort of be cautious about jumping to conclusions about what are the choices for the community. I firmly believe that there are going to be more at the end of the day than just, the proposal is presented and the 58 lot subdivision. It's really important to realize we're entering into a creative process, and there will be other options to put on the table. So that really is it. What council commits to is a draft budget, that we completed in December. So, in other words, we had a draft budget. So what you want, a provisional way, authorized expenditures and authorized staff to move forward on plans, even though all the details of the budget were not finalized. So it's not as though nothing's happening until we authorize the budget. Things are happening, and there's authorization to do so. But there are a lot of, I's to dot and T's to cross and all that.
Thank you.
Doug.
Just another element on that. In an election year especially, it's a process that is complicated by reshuffling the deck of political priorities. And I can speak probably to the new councilors. It's kind of daunting to step into a budget process that's 5 months underway by December. And so you basically handed this binder and say, here's the plan, what do you think? And the first 2 meetings. And it really does take up a lot of went into the first quarter of defining the political priorities, inserting them into a fiscal framework, and trying to orient ourselves for the next 3 years. It's not just 2009.
So Doug makes a good point, and I'll just underscore that. There really are, and when Joanne talked about budget cycles, there are 2 budget cycles. There are election year budget cycles, and there's the non-election year budget cycles. And the non-election budget cycles get things wrapped up way earlier. But every 3 years where you have a new council coming in and having to sort of take over a budget started by the previous council, you have to revisit things and everything goes forward. This year, we're in a budget cycle that is an election year budget cycle. Yes?
The one thing also to remember is there are certain elements that are required for us to complete the budget process. And by statute, it doesn't need to be completed until May 18th. The reason for that is that we don't get our assessment information until April. So we can't really consider what the effect of our budget is going to be on taxes, the reality of it, until we get all that information. We have a pretty good idea and all the rest of it, but it comes down to waiting for certain information to be present. Okay?
George, and then Hugh, can I go to someone else? If you've asked a question, there was another. Yeah. Okay, those 3, and then we'll come back to you.
Regards to the turf field,
Yeah.
with the completion date of August 2009, I assume you have a backup plan, and what is it?
Christine?
One of the things that we are meeting with the school district is coming Monday afternoon to talk about what was brought out of this, out of the resolution from council. So we will be sitting and brainstorming with the school district at that time to decide what plan we might need.
So there is no backup plan yet?
So we have to meet.
Another question? Yes.
My name is Barbara Simons, and I live on the Jason Road, Ocean View area. I'm not sure if my questions are appropriate for this time of the meeting, so please tell me if they belong in another section. These relate to security issues, but there are also infrastructure issues. So there are a number of us here who are very upset about what happened with the lack of snow removal in our area, to the point where Jason Road became an ice rink. And at least 2 people I knew fell just trying to walk on it. It was impossible to drive. If there had been an emergency, a medical emergency where we live, somebody could have died. And in fact, one of the people living in our area works with the ambulance crew. He couldn't even get out of his house to get to the ambulance. So one question I have is, what is being done to avoid this kind of situation in the future? There can easily be more storms like this. The forecast with climate change is increased precipitation in the winter, greater variation in temperature, in weather, and with increased precipitation and a few degrees cooler, we can have more of these massive snowstorms. So I want to know, one, what plans are being made to deal with this? Number 2, we were surprised to learn that the ambulance is only 2-wheel drive. Are there any thoughts to trying to acquire a 4-wheel drive ambulance? And then a somewhat related question, just a security question is, we noticed, for example, on Miller Road, people walk on that road all the time. It is a dangerous road. Are there any plans, you're talking about infrastructure projects? How about putting in walking paths and bicycle paths that are off-road? Because these are also security issues and they're also environmentally relevant.
Let me start those questions, and staff, please pick up. You'll notice that we don't have any public works staff here today. Basically, Will Wilson wasn't able to. Your question really is a question to Will. I talked, knowing that he wasn't coming, I talked to him before this and anticipated some of these questions. Regarding, the issue of snow clearing, I can only sort of speak in a general sense. But one of the initiatives that came out of this, and I think it started at Bishop Hill, it was sort of an idea of how can the neighbors be empowered to sort of do their sort of part to maintain access. And one of the ideas that came up was local salt boxes in neighborhoods. So neighbors could essentially access salt sand mixtures that are in boxes